Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of its kind LinkedIn Live conversation hosted by the Monterey Bay Aquarium. I'm Donielle Stevens, Senior Communications Strategist, and I'm so excited to be talking today with Margaret Spring, our Conservation and Science Chief Officer at the Monterey Bay Aquarium and a leading voice in ocean and environmental policy. Welcome, Margaret.
Thanks, Danielle.
We're here today to talk about the outcome of the latest round of negotiations for a global plastics treaty, which recently concluded without agreement in Geneva. While this is deeply disappointing, the science is clearer than ever, and public momentum is stronger than ever. Today, we'll unpack the UN's attempt to address plastic pollution and where we go from here. Margaret Spring is our Chief Conservation and Science Officer and has participated in the global plastics treaty negotiations as an observer since 2022, when 193 countries of the United Nations unanimously agreed to develop a treaty to address the full life cycle of plastics and end plastic pollution. In addition to chairing a U.S. National Academies of Science report to Congress in 2021, and serving as a member of the Minderoo Monaco Commission on Plastics and Human Health, you now chair a 16-member global expert group on plastic pollution from the International Science Council, and that's providing expert policy advice to the process and has identified science-based priorities for an effective treaty. Most recently, you just at the negotiations participated in the launch of an influential new report you co-authored, The Lancet Countdown on Health and Plastics, published by the respected British medical journal, The Lancet. This will kick off a multi-year monitoring of progress on this topic, which is of great concern to both the public and decision makers. So I'm so excited to talk about Geneva. We haven't had a chance since you got back to really talk about this, so I'm excited to break it all down with you. If you can tell us, why is a global plastics treaty such a critical opportunity to confront plastic pollution? And tell us a little bit, this was supposed to be the final round of talks, right? So kind of orient us to the Geneva conversations.
Okay, great. Well, for those of you who are worried about plastic pollution, you probably know enough to know it's a global problem. It's not something you can fix in your backyard or even at a state or federal level. The plastic goes everywhere, and the solutions need to be not just at the end of the pipe, but from the beginning. And one of the things that I learned myself as someone who had been involved in cleanup is that when you clean up a beach, it actually gets dirty again because there's no end to the amount of plastic pollution that is coming in. And so when we completed this expert report in 2021, just as the U.S., in fact, joined the negotiations, it was very clear to us, and we told Congress, that this is an issue that requires a systemic approach, a life cycle approach. You can't clean it up if you don't stop it at the source and deal with all of the intervening areas. We call that systemic interventions. And so not only is it global, but you have to understand we've been using plastic for many, many decades. In fact, plastic has increased in production probably by the day I was born. It started to really accelerate, and it's now projected to triple by 2060. So there's a huge amount of plastic coming into the system, and we have to look at how we got here and then start working our way backwards. This is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's not one thing that's going to solve it. It's going to be a systemic approach that we need to take. So the reason all those countries came together is that they couldn't solve it alone, and they really knew that this was a problem, and they wanted to take a holistic approach. Now, in Geneva, we were supposed to complete this in 2 years, which to me was an unheard of quick timeline for something this complicated. And not only do we have a lot of delegations from countries all over the world with different understanding of the issue, but we have many, many observers, and there were so many more observers probably than in any other kind of a negotiation of this sort, from science, which I represented, as well as the Monterey Bay Aquarium, to communities in Louisiana and Texas, to people from Africa, waste pickers. You had, and then of course, lots and lots and lots of industry representatives, as well as experts in many, many topics from waste to health. And so we all converged, and there was a lot more work, I think, to be done than people thought. So we thought this was going to end at the end of last year in the fifth meeting in Busan, Korea. We actually made some progress, and because of that, the chair was able to close the meeting, but hold it over till next year. And that was this year. This was the meeting that was supposed to tie up all the loose ends. And so we came into it very hopefully. But I think I'll stop there. And this is really an extraordinary effort. So many people showed up and stayed and have been working on this for so long, even before 2022. So there was a huge amount of momentum coming into this, and a lot of hope.
Yeah. And what were we hoping a strong agreement would look like that would really try to protect human health and the environment from plastic pollution?
Right. First of all, from the Monterey Bay Aquarium perspective, we care about the ocean. And so one of the things that's important to emphasize in this treaty is that we also really care about the marine environment. And so that's one thing we brought. But in general, we wanted a systemic approach with a lot of science in it, and then really addressing ocean-based sources, all of which was sort of on the table. But now with all this new information on health and all the complications of it and the use of chemicals in plastic, all of this information came to the fore in the last 2 years with a lot of very recent reports on from top experts on the science and the health issues. So what you want to see is not only a treaty that is protective of human health and the environment, but also that deals with the entire life cycle of plastics from production until disposal and leakage. The other thing we want to see is dealing with the chemicals of concern and the products of concern, the things that are of most concern to us for health and the environment. And you've seen some countries and some states like California ban certain products, but we actually need to look at the chemicals of concern. There are 16,000 chemicals that are used in plastic that we know of to date, and we don't know anything about over 2/3 of them. And of the substances we do know about, 75% of them really are hazardous. So we know that they leach. Plastic was made to be usable, but was not really looked at as a safety issue as much as we need it to be. So those are what we want to see in the treaty are some controls and binding obligations on chemicals that are used in plastic, so we don't have an exposure during use. We also want to address plastic products. We definitely need to address the overproduction of plastic, and there's a lot of talk about a sustainable level of plastic production and consumption, which is not a defined term, but it's a concept that's really important to get to, because you can't make this work without dealing with too much production and not enough management. Of course, we need to deal with waste management, increasing that, and science, and also we need to know a lot more about that. We need more data, and we need transparency about what's in plastic, because even recyclers can't figure out how to recycle when they're certain products when they're contaminated and they don't know what's in the product. So everybody needs more transparency, not only the public but the actual producers of plastic products.
Yeah, that's so true. And even though the negotiations in Geneva didn't deliver a final treaty, we've seen some remarkable progress in the last 3 years. Growing global awareness, youth-led activism, public art installations. We talked about the global media attention on this subject, and support from businesses and financial institutions, as well as political will. There is a lot of political will here to get this done. So what kind of gives you hope from all of this momentum, even with the outcome that we saw?
Right. I think that there's an earnest effort. First of all the countries showed up. In every one of these meetings, when people say, oh, this meeting blew up nobody walked out. They stayed to the end. They tried really hard. All these countries tried really hard to come to an agreement. And that happened here in very, very clearly. We saw delegations staying up overnight, working very hard. We saw business groups come together and ask for change and push their delegations to stay at the table. We also saw youth. Huge youth groups came up, and we at the Aquarium have now partnered with the Youth Plastic Action Network. They were fantastic. And so there's new life in this process, and going to the next meeting, which I think will happen, the countries now have to really hone in on landing zones for these chemicals questions, the production issue, sustainable financing for Africa and other countries that can't afford it. And then finally, decision making. Can we actually make decisions clearly and come and move past this conflict zone? And that's really what I'll be looking for moving forward.
Yeah, that's great. One last question. What does this mean for national, state, and local action? And how will the Monterey Bay Aquarium continue to bring science and solutions to the table?
Well, certainly we don't need to wait for a global treaty to take action. In fact, the state of California has already started and is far ahead of many U.S. states and certainly many countries. So we've been backing a number of things. Many of you know about the ban on single-use plastic bags, which has been renewed and fixed. We also have the SB 54, which is a groundbreaking and precedent-setting bill and law that actually asks us to reduce packaging on a timeline with targets and timelines. And of course, we're also looking into microplastics here. So we're monitoring our drinking water for microplastics, one of the first states in the union. So we've actually done a lot here already, and we need to keep moving because everything we do here in the state or anywhere else in the country or in the world is a model, a policy model for what can be done. Just as we at the aquarium have removed single-use plastics from our store. So we really have to model change, and moving faster at local and state levels is a really important thing to model.
Awesome. Margaret, thank you so much for sharing your insights here. Clearly, the urgency of plastic pollution hasn't gone away. Each year, more than 12 million tons of plastic enter our oceans, and plastic production is set to triple by 2060 if nothing changes. So to everyone watching, the science is clear. Your voice matters, your actions matter, and our work is far from over. So follow the Monterey Bay Aquarium to stay engaged. Sign up for our Ocean Action newsletter. We'll put that link in the chat. And we'll stay in touch with actions you can take to push for solutions at every level. Because the truth is, the health of our planet and our ocean depends on it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Donielle. Thank you, everybody.